Hello and welcome to the Psychohealthology Summit 2018. Thank you so much for joining. I'm your host, Dr. Radek, and my guest for this session here, right here with us, is Sarah Small. Sarah is the founder of Autoimmune Tribe. She's a certified bioenergetic practitioner, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, health and mindset coach for women with autoimmune disease, certified vibrational crystal healer, and certified oracle card reader. Sarah has her own autoimmune story, and I actually want her to tell you the story, so she will share that in a moment. And as it often happens, emotional and energetic modalities played a big role in Sarah's healing, which she will also talk about. And Sarah now leads other empowered souls on their healing journey by educating them on how to heal beyond food and build a holistic healing toolbox that will support their well-being so they never feel broken like she did. So, Sarah, welcome to the Psychohealthology Summit. It's wonderful to connect with you, particularly because I also, in my healing, the energetic and the psychological, emotional play such a massive role. So, I do feel we have a lot in common. So, welcome. Fantastic to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I promised that you're going to share your autoimmune story, your journey. So are you okay to open up with that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a long one. And I think that's a common theme for many of us who have struggled with chronic illness, is that it's not always a fast or easy diagnosis. And so that was also my situation. And really now I'm 30 years old now, and I reflect on my life. I realize that it really started at a young age, and I didn't make sense of it back then. But I was about 12 years old when my parents got divorced, and I was the oldest of four. And it was kind of a tumultuous time in my life. And there was a lot of anger and resentment and, just being a 12-year-old. And I really stepped into this role of caretaker for my younger siblings when my parents were not as emotionally available. And right after that event happened in my life, I developed a physical symptom of debilitating stomach pain. And it would just make me curl over. And after seeing several doctors, I was diagnosed with stomach migraines. So often children will manifest migraines in their stomach instead of their head. And they're typically stress related. And I tried to be perfect at everything. And those started to subside a little bit. But then in high school, I developed this really horrible back pain. And I would come home from school and I would just fall on the ground and I would beg my mom to rub my back. And it just never went away. That back pain never let up. I ended up quitting the soccer team, which was something I really loved. And by the time I was 17, I had seen 17 different conventional doctors and all the different types of specialties and everything. And I was diagnosed around the age of 17 with fibromyalgia, or this chronic pain. And that really led me down this path that I think I'm probably still resentful towards, because I was basically handed this never-ending pot of narcotics. And when one narcotic was no longer working or was no longer effective, my doctor would just prescribe me the next one and the next one and the next one until I was a senior in high school. And I took so many pain pills that I puked and I overdosed at the homecoming parade. And it's a really clear memory of mine where I had accidentally taken too much, ended up going home puking. I was fine, but it was this big aha moment for me, which was that these pain pills are not even taking away the pain, let alone getting to the root cause of why I was experiencing pain. And then we went a little bit alternative, and I've been on like Lyrica and Cymbalta, and those are two more popular kind of drugs that are, antidepressant for Cymbalta, but then used for fibromyalgia. And when I was on those, same thing. It was like I lost my appetite. The pain never really went away. I would feel like I was living in a cloud, and the pain was still there. So I got really angry. And this was about my first year of college, and I was really pissed off. And I decided to stop taking all my medication and try something more holistic and alternative. And that was started as yoga. And I tried yoga, and yoga became my addiction. And I thought, yoga can heal me. Yoga can heal my mind. But I was still experiencing these panic attacks. Around that time, I started developing like dark pigment in my skin called melasma. And that was in combination with also these really white spots in my skin, which is vitiligo, which is an autoimmune disease. So I started getting all these, uncomfortable symptoms in my skin, having these panic attacks. And so I figured, okay, I'll become a vegetarian. And fast forward about 5 years later of being a vegetarian, my skin got even worse. And I had eczema that was mostly on my arms, and my skin was so raw that I would bleed and my hands would get bloody. And I just had like these eczema spots between my fingers, and I would cover my hands in Band-Aids when I would go to my graduate school classes. And my face broke out in cystic acne. Every time I ate, my stomach would blow up like a balloon. I was so bloated, and it was so uncomfortable that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this feeling. So I finally saw a holistic practitioner in Chicago, and I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And I thought, okay, I have done all these different changes to my diet. I'm going to do the yoga. I'm meditating. I'm doing everything right? Exercising, eating healthy, meditating. And I was frustrated because I still wasn't feeling as good as I wanted to feel. So that was when I played the victim. And I see this a lot in people, individuals with chronic illness. It's like we are tempted just to shake our hands up at the universe and say, like, why me? And play that victim role. And I very much fit right into that role, which, I later learned that was the opposite of what my body needed to heal. So that shift out of victim mode happened for me 3 years ago. And I looked at my phone after stepping away from it for about an hour, and I had 13 missed calls from every single one of my family members. And I decided to call my dad back, and he said, Sarah, Jordan, my brother, is dead. And Jordan was my younger brother, about 2 years younger than me. And I remember I was in Chicago in my boyfriend's passenger seat of his car, and my entire world just completely crumbled. I completely broke down, and my brother committed suicide. And in the weeks, years, months following his death and the loss of someone so precious to me, I completely cracked open. And it was during this time of my life that, number one, I was filled with grief, but also that grief was so overwhelming that instead of pretending to be fine, which I had done a lot of my whole life, I finally let the emotions in and I expressed those emotions. And I felt finally like I was being true to myself and authentic and no longer putting up this facade and this wall. And through that grief, I actually found energy medicine, the emotional side of healing that you've mentioned that was powerful for you as well. So I learned and I studied and I practiced healing my heart instead of just eliminating food through my diet. And through healing my heart and allowing my brother to really serve as my guide through this process, I found my deepest healing yet. And that has been through the emotional, energetic, and spiritual side of healing as a complement to the physical side. And so it's been a really long journey, but the last couple of years, I've really gotten to the root of illness and understood why I experience physical symptoms instead of just trying to cover them up. So that's a little bit of my story.
Wow. I mean, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing it and your openness and honesty. And yeah, I'm sure people are resonating absolutely with your message. You know, in some ways, we all have challenges in life, but you somehow managed to turn this awful tragedy into something that turned out to be, in the end, positive for you, because obviously it actually opened you up to new possibilities, new ways of healing as well. So it's never easy, but that's the thing. Sometimes people need to heal the heart. If you have a lot of grief and a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, all of that is obviously gonna be blocking the healing process, as we know. So you mentioned a few modalities. Were there any sort of other specific modalities that you used that helped you along?
Yeah, and so as you heard through a little bit of my experience, I definitely did start with conventional medicine, but felt honestly very like jaded and traumatized to that whole experience. So I kind of said screw it all together, and I tried to figure it out on my own for a while, which ended up not being the best option. And I'd say one of the greatest things I ever did in my healing was really just confronting my shadow and doing some of the shadow work. For example, dissecting my limiting beliefs and rewiring some of my thoughts in my brain to really get out of the victim mentality and instead start to ask my body, if I was bloated, for example, asking, okay, what message is my body trying to send me through this physical symptom? What's going on a deeper level here? So really shifting into the emotional, spiritual, energetic, which are each a little different in their own right, but as a whole have been really beautiful complements to the functional medicine approach that I now take, and helping me to completely transform my mindset around that to get out of the victim mode.
Yeah, and actually, you know, in a way, the victim stage is just a phase of you know, everybody with autoimmunity pretty much near enough. I don't actually know anybody who hasn't at some point gone through that stage, but absolutely healing that and understanding that the body is trying to communicate. The symptoms are just the way of the body communicating, but not only that, the symptoms are also a sign that the body's already taking steps to heal. And just understanding all that, I think it really helps, takes the pressure off. But, you know, you have to sort of reassure people who are still at that stage that, you know what, it's natural. We all go through that. But if you are watching and you are at that point, you do need to understand that this definitely is hindering your healing right now. So even if you need to get some help to overcome it, then that is definitely, I would recommend that. And I'm sure Sarah would too. So so you work a lot with chakras and all sorts of other things, of course. But I actually wanted to you to tell us a little bit about, and people may or may not know that, but let's go through it anyway. So what we want to know what chakras are, and also what emotion is each one of them associated with, or emotions, because there could be more than one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love talking about this. So on the most simple level, a chakra is just an energy center, or sometimes known as a wheel of life. And we have 7 main chakras. We actually have many more than 7, but the main 7 are talked about most frequently and most popular. They don't actually live in our physical body. They live in the subtle energy body, but they are related to aspects of our physical body. So our subtle energy body is that kind of like that third dimension, that layer outside of the physical body. And each energy center is related to different aspects of our being. And I like to see them, again, like this wheel that is spinning and turning and projects not only forward. Sometimes we forget that we have a backside to us. So, for example, your heart chakra is going to have this rotation or spin in the front of your chest and your heart, but also the backside. I will say that when I think of the chakras, I also think of it as a very individualized process. So, for example, what shows up in my sacral chakra, that's right below your belly button, that might be really different than, say, what shows up in your sacral chakra. When I work with clients, I look at them as this, you know, very individual and unique being to figure out what might be happening in each of the chakras. Your root chakra is your base chakra, and it's located at the base of your spine. And each of the chakras are not only related to a physical, like body part or body parts, but the emotions, like you said, as well. So this is going to be mostly the lower half of your body, your knees, your hips, your feet, and the base of your spine. This is the color red. And some of the emotions around this or aspects of our being are survival. So if our basic needs are not being met, we will see that as an imbalance in the root chakra. If you feel like your body is constantly in survival mode, like you may struggle with adrenal fatigue, and your body is having some cortisol imbalances, that could show up in your root chakra as well. Root chakra is also wanting to feel safe and protected and grounded, like you are able and you feel safe being present with yourself in your life. So an underactive root chakra would feel insecure, maybe even have financial insecurities, and an overactive root chakra would feel more like selfish and materialistic. Your sacral chakra is kind of like working up the body, the next one above the root chakra, and that, as I mentioned before, is kind of along your pant line or below your belly button. This is the color orange, and our sacral chakra really has a lot to do with our creativity, our passion, our sexuality, our relationships, sensuality, and creation energy. And in a woman, we think of like the womb and all the creation that happens within our womb. And so I can see imbalances there for some people if they're having relationship issues. An underactive sacral chakra might feel really shy or hesitant to express their emotions or feelings and hide their emotions, whereas an overactive sacral chakra might be actually kind of volatile with their emotions and even slightly aggressive. Then above your belly button is your solar plexus, and it's kind of between like your rib cage, so below your diaphragm but above your belly button. This is the color yellow, and I'm a little biased. I think this might be one of my favorite chakras because it's all about your power, and it's also related to, so if you have any digestive symptoms or illness, disease that manifests in your stomach, this is typically also an imbalance in your solar plexus, as well as gallbladder and even some nervous system as well in the solar plexus. But some of the emotions around this are power, self-esteem and confidence, your inner fire, energy, and happiness. So an underactive solar plexus would have low self-esteem, might feel insecure and self-conscious or just tired. And again, that makes sense a little bit with your adrenal glands because this part of the body on the backside is about where your adrenal glands are, your kidneys and your adrenal glands. So if you're experiencing adrenal fatigue, you may also have imbalance in solar plexus as well. An overactive solar plexus is the workaholic who really wants to be the authority and the leader and take control of everything all the time, which I have resonated with at times in my life. Your heart chakra is right in the center of your chest, right around your heart, associated on the physical, like organ level with your heart, as well as your lungs and your arms too. And our heart chakra is love. It's not only love that we project into the world, but it's also self-love and acceptance. It is also our compassion and our empathy to the world and to others, and in whether or not we're able to forgive. So an underactive heart chakra is going to be someone who doesn't feel worthy of love. They might be really afraid to forgive or to let go. So they're kind of grasping onto things in their life and having a lot of negative self-talk. Whereas an overactive heart chakra is someone who is struggling with some balance in their life and unable to go with the flow. They also may have a tendency to like blame or be critical of not only themselves, others, but kind of the world in general. Throat chakra is one I think probably a lot of listeners will relate to. I know at least in my community autoimmune tribe, there are many women specifically who struggle with Hashimoto's. And so your throat chakra is at the base of your throat. It's your throat, your jaw, your neck, and your thyroid gland. And this is the color blue. And our throat is all about speaking our truth. It is communication. It is your ability to express yourself in not only like a clear way through your voice, but also through dance or music or art or creative expression too. And our throat chakra also stores fear or love. I believe that fear and love cannot coexist, but we are either live in fear or we live in love. So this is our truth center. And an underactive throat chakra is, I have seen at least some common themes in Hashimoto's and an underactive throat chakra where people are unable to express themselves. They may be very, very caring and nurturing. So they have this really big heart, but they have a hard time kind of speaking up for themselves, standing up for themselves. Whereas an overactive throat chakra is more of the person who's the chatty Cathy and kind of never wants to stop talking and can even accidentally come off as like rude or trying to force their opinions on others. Your sixth chakra is your third eye, so right between your eyebrows, kind of the center of your forehead. And this is probably my second favorite chakra, but this is all about your intuition. It is your higher self. It is self-reflection, your dream state, and feeling inspired, and the wisdom that is innately in your body. And your third eye, if it's underactive, it's the color purple. And when I say there's a color associated, it's because that color has a frequency that is the same as the vibration of that chakra. So an underactive third eye would be someone who is really, really sensitive. They also may on the physical level experience headaches or migraines, which again, I have a lot of people in my community who struggle with headaches and migraines. An overactive third eye is going to be more of this egotistical person who comes off, or at least thinks they are all knowing. And one way to balance your third eye is actually to choose love over fear. And then lastly, of the main chakra system, at least, is your seventh chakra, and that's your crown. So it's at the top of your head. And this is all related to, number one, your ability to feel bliss in your life and knowing kind of like your place in the world, meaning your soul's purpose and your life path. And it is related to peace, to connection to your higher self, to healing on all levels, and also your spiritual beliefs, if you have them. So an underactive crown chakra, which is typically associated with like clear quartz and selenite as far as crystals go, which are more like that white or clear. An underactive crown chakra is going to be this person who really maybe feels isolated, but also is completely unsure of like, what was I put on this earth to do? Like, what is my soul's purpose? Whereas an overactive crown chakra, you may experience a lot of anger, frustration, those migraines or headaches similar to the third eye, and be really confused or not have any spiritual beliefs and kind of this like, what do I believe in kind of question that you present to the world and don't know if you have an answer on. So those are the 7 main chakras. I know I've given a lot of information. I don't want to go too much more.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. So what you were talking about, it was underactive and overactive, and you're giving examples of that. So I'm just curious, when you work with people, how do you tell underactive from overactive from perfectly balanced?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I love to be able to clarify that for people and just bring transparency around it, because otherwise people can kind of see it as like woo or woo-woo. And they're like, what? We have such a hard time as human beings believing something that we can't see with our human eyes. But I think we have to remember that we are only human and that these eyeballs cannot see, for example, even like, some of the technology, like waves that we create, or like radio waves, etc. So there's a lot of things that are more on the quantum level that aren't visible to the human eye. And chakras are one of those. So what I like to do to help people understand is allow them to visualize this. And so I do this in several ways. And this is something people can do at home as well. So the first option is to use a pendulum. Actually, I have one in my desk. I can grab it. So I keep it in this little pouch. And just so you can see kind of like what does a pendulum look like, it's just a cord. It doesn't have to have all these fancy things on it. And there's a point at the bottom. So if I were to hold this over, say, your heart to measure the spin of your heart chakra, what I would want to see is a rotation of a clockwise rotation, and this might be opposite on video screen, but I promise I'm going in a clockwise direction, about the size of your fist at an oscillation of 1/1000 per second. So if I held this pendulum over your heart, I could see several things. I might see little to no movement like I'm kind of seeing right now. And I'm just going to force it to spin for visualization purposes. But if I saw it spin more like this, that would be a pretty balanced chakra. And then sometimes I also will see it spin in reverse. And when I see a chakra spinning in reverse, that to me it's not something to be completely alarmed about, but definitely something to take note of and say, okay, what are the imbalances in that chakra that it's so imbalanced that it's spinning the opposite direction? So as for the science side, I like to think of the chakra kind of like this tornado of energy. A tornado sucks up everything in its path. So it might pull a tree out of the earth, and then that tree then it starts to rotate in the same circle or pace, an oscillation as the tornado. And I like to think of using the pendulum kind of like that. So this clear quartz has a pretty neutral energy, and it's like it's picking up the energy of that chakra. So it's a little tricky to do on your own body because you have to lay down and kind of hold it over you, but you could hold it over somebody else's body, or you could have them hold it over your body. Maybe you overdrafted your account this month and you're super stressed about money and paying the bills. Well, that's an indication that you probably have an imbalance in your root chakra. So just knowing, okay, root chakra is survival and safety and money and basic needs. Okay, well, that doesn't feel very balanced in my life right now. It's probably an imbalance in the root chakra.
I don't know whether we made that very clear, but in case people are asking, oh, okay, so my chakras are in balance, so what's the big deal? Maybe you could actually just speak to that for a sec. And also I wanted to ask you, once people have identified, obviously they can work with you, but is there any way that they can perhaps do some of their own balancing and healing as well?
There are also several ways to bring your body back into balance. And just to go back to the first part of your question as well, so to make the connection, if you, for example, are having a really hard time digesting life, your brain is kind of just constantly busy, and you don't really maybe you have poor sleep as well, and you're having a really hard time processing just life because a lot is happening for you right now. That could actually show up in your stomach as stomach pain or as bloat like I experienced. If you are going through a big change in your life, say you broke up with your significant other, you moved across the country, and you're starting a new job. Like those are all really big life changes. And so you may find that, okay, all of a sudden you move from Massachusetts to California, get to California, and you're like, oh my God, all of a sudden I'm experiencing this stomach pain. That can be because of some of the emotional things that you're experiencing in your life that are then manifesting on a physical level. So I hope that is at least one example of how the physical and the energetic of the chakras really relate to each other. As far as balancing them, so like you mentioned, that's exactly what I help people do. So I do healing sessions with clients, and I recommend specific infoceuticals. And what an infoceutical is basically just a little dropper bottle, and it's water with minerals in it, and it's imprinted with information to help balance the body. So we don't have infoceuticals for each chakra, but we do, for example, each of the energy meridians and major organs and systems of the body. So you could take an infoceutical on for your liver, for example. And liver is really interesting, and that liver is where we hold anger. So if you have a lot of anger in your life and you haven't especially been able to express the anger, or maybe you were taught as a little kid that it was not okay to be angry, like you needed to have kind of that straight face, all of your everything put together all the time, and being angry was looked upon negatively. Well, that anger can manifest in your liver, and as a result, you may experience hormone imbalance because our liver helps metabolize estrogen in the body. Or you may, in my case, this was my case, I was very angry and it was in my liver, and so my liver got really overloaded, and that showed up in my physical tests, lab tests as well. But then it manifested as like breakouts in my skin because my skin was trying to like take over a little bit of the job of the liver. So if you have an imbalance in your throat chakra, something you can do on your own is, if you remember, throat chakra is related to speaking your truth, to standing up for yourself. And if it's underactive, you're probably putting everyone before you. And I think of actually Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disease, as the people pleaser's disease in some ways. And again, it's different for every single person on an individual level, but you may be a natural caretaker and you might be so kind and so giving, but lack boundaries. So one way to balance your throat chakra would be to start creating boundaries in your life, realizing that saying no doesn't make you a mean or bad person, that you're allowed to say no, and that you get to choose how you want to be treated and what is okay and what is not okay with you. And the same thing goes for each of the chakra centers. If you understand why there's an imbalance on the emotional or more of a behavioral level, like not having boundaries, how can you make shifts in your life to overcome that and bring it back into balance?
Brilliant tips, thank you. And for anybody who is a little bit intrigued about the infoceuticals that I was talking about, I just want to refer to the interview with Harry Massey, who is, of course, the founder of Nest Health. And we were talking with Harry at length about the infoceuticals, how they work, what they are, and what they can achieve. So you can learn more about them from that interview. But that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So you work with crystals as well, right? So that's another way of adjusting the vibrational frequencies, because obviously that falls under the category of energy healing also.
Absolutely, yes. I use crystals in healing as well with clients and personally. So, for example, I mentioned or tried to remember to mention each of the colors and the frequency of that color that's associated with each chakra. So blue is the throat chakra. So blue crystals, and crystals being this very crystalline or permanent structure, they naturally want to come back into their dominant oscillatory rate and energy of a crystal compared to our bodies that are so fluid, right? Like I could feel a different emotion in 10 minutes than I feel now. And, I might be like digesting food at one point and my stomach's empty at one point. Like we're just constantly ebbing and flowing as human beings. And, what I find crystals are beautiful for is that they have this beautiful, more permanent structure. And so just like we took the pendulum and put it kind of in that energy center of the body to see what's going on, well, you could take a blue crystal and actually just rest it on the base of your throat and lay down, and you can lay down and watch TV, but I recommend meditating during the process so you feel more of the energy. And just for like 10 minutes, lay down with a blue crystal on your throat, and allow that to, it's like training your chakra to come back into balance. So crystals I use different crystals on that specific part of the body for our entire chakra system. And they're just a beautiful tool to complement the healing of your chakras overall.
That's fabulous, and thank you for everything that you have shared, and I've really enjoyed listening to you and talking to you. But I wanted to ask you before we end, do you have any sort of final comments? Do you want to share maybe there's something that we didn't mention that you still want to talk about? Or maybe, talk more about your projects, about your work, or maybe some final words of wisdoms or tips for people with autoimmunity who actually want to take their healing to another level, and particularly from the point of view of optimizing the mindset and the emotional side in order to aid healing.
Yeah, no, I think this aspect of healing is often overlooked, and I love to be able to shine a little bit of a light on it and bring awareness around it, and I appreciate you so much for giving me that platform to do that. One of the most important things I did in my personal healing was actually hire a coach, and I think we can be so resistant to that, and what I learned was that through experimenting, I never really got to the root of what was going on. And it can be so helpful to have the outside perspectives. So I really do recommend that everyone builds kind of this community or tribe to help them heal on a deeper level. And I talk a lot about healing beyond food on a soul level. And that may be an aspect that people have not considered or have left out of their healing. And then just a message to leave with your listeners is to start believing in the power of your thoughts. So this is a famous quote, maybe you've heard it, but if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. So whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I think that this work has really been brought to the surface by Dr. Bruce Lipton. He is amazing on the power of belief and the power of even that internal voice that we are talking to ourselves every single day. What is that voice saying? And allowing ourselves to rewire some of our thoughts and beliefs to get out of that victim mode and to support healing on a really holistic level, so that we can let go of some of those past experiences or traumas that are stuck in our body and really liberate ourselves and be open to healing and open to receive healing in our lives.
That's fantastic. And I am smiling here because can you see what's behind me? The little black thing behind me. That's the exact quote from Henry Ford. If you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. And that's right behind me. So that is one of my favorite quotes, which is why it's on my bookshelf, right? So I love it. I love it that you brought that in. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is undeniable that our thoughts and consciousness really do affect our reality. So that's absolutely a brilliant message to finish on. So Sarah, thank you so much. Again, it was fantastic connecting with you. And we appreciate you so much for everything you've shared. So from myself and everybody else who's watching, thank you so much. Massive appreciation.
Thank you. I appreciate your time so much. And it was a pleasure to speak to the audience today. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this interview and if you'd like a lifetime access to all of the interviews as well as some fantastic exclusive bonuses, then the information on how to get your All Access Pass is right here on this page.